Alright everybody, I think it's time for the next level of care for this angelfish. I know you can't see it now because it just insists on keeping its right side facing us, but on its left side it's got a big patch of fuzzy stuff growing, and my initial thought was that it was columnaris, and it still may be, I don't know. But I also thought it's possible that it could be a fungal infection. I'm treating the tank for both. Here, we'll get a good look at it. I'm treating the tank for both columnaris and fungal infections. I'm using Pimafix and I'm using Maricin 2. And after almost 2 days of treatment now, day and a half of treatment, it's not going away, but it's getting worse. The fuzz is turning into sort of long, stringy, hair-like. It almost looks fibrous as it flows behind it as it swims along. If you look down the length of it, if it'll turn in the right direction, you can see what I'm talking about much more. So I don't know whether that's indicative of a fungal infection or if that's indicative of the columns that they speak of, where columnaris gets its name. Apparently the bacterial colonies grow in these sort of column-like shapes, or the bacterial cells themselves, each individual bacterium is apparently, so you can kind of see it flowing there in the current. It looks like hair at this point. It looks like sort of fuzzy white hair. So whether that's fungal or bacterial, I don't know. But what we're going to do now is we're going to get in there with a dip net. I'm going to capture him. We're going to put him in a little bit of a stronger concentration of a salt bath. We're not going to use any special salts. We're only going to use aquarium salt. And what we're going to do for the serious treatment is we're going to use a cotton swab and some 3% hydrogen peroxide solution, and we're going to go ahead and swab that down and try to wipe away as much of the physical fuzzy material as possible and sort of get that area cleaned up while he gets maybe a 10-minute salt bath, and then we're going to go ahead and reintroduce him into the tank and continue medicating the tank. So I'm not going to film me catching him or anything, but we're going to go ahead and do that now, and I will see you over at the workstation, and we'll get started on that. Alright, so here we are. Now, I've never done anything like this before, so we're going to see how this goes. But it's really some really nasty looking fuzzy stuff down its left side here, and I can actually still see some on its right side, so I suppose we're just going to have to pick it up, whether it likes it or not, and then just swab that area off. I can definitely see damage to the scales, so it looks like there's some raw flesh exposed. This is not the side I'm overly concerned about. Hopefully it won't flick around too much on me here. Oh, there we go. It's that side that we've got to worry about. Come on, fish, cooperate a little bit with me here. That's the side we've really got to worry about. You can see where all those scales are missing, and that's just raw skin right there. Hopefully this will not only remove some of that physical growth, but sterilize the area that's been injured. Hang on, I'm almost done. Alright, so we're going to give it a few more minutes in the salt bath here. You can see where the bubbles are starting to form on the skin, so that's good. Hopefully that will kill any bacterial or fungal infection. It'll oxidize it, and that'll be that. So we're going to give him a few more minutes. I can actually see some of the fungal stuff floating around in the water. We'll see if we can get that out physically. I, of course, am going to wash my hands thoroughly. The net is going to get sterilized before anything else gets done with it, and then we're going to very carefully put this fish back into the tank by hand rather than pour any of this water whatsoever back into the tank. So let him get started with that, and then I'm going to go ahead and start washing up and cleaning up and preparing for him to go back in the tank. Alright, so we're safely back in the tank, and the way I decided to make the transfer to be as clean as possible was I got the water running and I brought the water up to temperature, so it was a nice comfortable temperature, and I removed the fish from the bath by hand and then ran it under my tap water. And my tap water is not municipal water. I don't have any chlorine or anything like that in there. My tap water goes straight into my tank, so that's not an issue at all. Be mindful of that. So once I'd sort of given it a good rinse and washed off any of the physical debris that might have been left over from that tank, any of those strands of bacteria or anything, I definitely let the water wash across the injured areas, and the other side looks much worse if it turns around for us. When I was done that, before I brought it back to the tank, I took the remaining hydrogen peroxide that was in that little vial, and I very carefully poured it onto the wounded areas and around on the surrounding areas, making sure to pour away from the gills. I made sure not to get any hydrogen peroxide on the gills at all. In fact, I actually kept my hands over the gill flaps to make sure that they were closed and my hands would prevent any inadvertent hydrogen peroxide from coming in contact with the gill tissue. You do not want that to happen. It begins oxidizing the gill tissue the same way as it begins oxidizing the injured tissue on its back. On that note, I will say also that this is kind of a radical treatment. Hydrogen peroxide is generally not used as an antiseptic anymore because it damages cellular tissue. So whether it's the fungus or bacteria or it's the skin cells, generally when you use hydrogen peroxide to sterilize a wound or something like that, it leaves much more severe scarring than if you use other methods to sterilize a wound. So this fish is probably going to experience some scarring anyway, just from the severity of the injuries. And that is if it pulls through and it doesn't have, an outbreak come back and it gets worse, or who knows, we're not out of the woods yet. There's a little bit better look. So let me try to zoom in here for a moment. So you can see that's raw skin, but I did remove all of the physical fuzzy stuff, whatever, again, that is bacteria or fungus, I'm not sure, but we removed all of that physically and pretty much cleaned up and sterilized the wound. So he's back in the tank. The tank is going to continue being medicated just in case, and the next step is going to be to get that Chinese algae eater out of this tank. I saw him again tonight harassing this angelfish. I've never had that much issue with it in the past. Every time I've noticed it getting anywhere near what would approach aggression towards the angelfish, I would just throw a few extra, shrimp pellets in the tank, and it would just go away, and the behavior would go back to perfectly normal and would not have any issues whatsoever. So over the last few days I was doing that, and I was not seeing any improvement at all. And as of about an hour ago, he was at it again, harassing this angelfish. So whether he's physically doing damage at this point or not doesn't matter to me. He's still continuing to severely stress this fish. So he's on his way out. In fact, I will leave you with this little bit of a teaser. You can see I've begun work on getting him out of here. I've actually removed several rocks out of the tank already that were not really doing anything, just kind of, giving the appearance and looks, but they were also creating tons and tons of caves and hiding spaces. So we're starting to work on it. But all of this fern is rooted into these rocks. This little chunk of fern in the left-hand corner is actually just sort of a free-floating ball of fern. All of these Anubias and Java fern are either attached to those rocks or the piece of wood in the back. Likewise, all of these rocks have the Java and Anubias growing on them. So it's going to be a little bit of a dismantling project, but I'm going to have to do it. That's the only way I'm going to get this wily little bastard out of here. I've been trying and I've given up tonight. I'm frustrated. I'm tired of dealing with it. So hopefully I stressed out the algae eater enough that he's going to go to ground and not bother the angelfish anymore tonight. and then tomorrow I'll work on getting him out of there, and then we'll talk about where he's going to go in another video. So make sure you're subscribed. We'll be doing lots and lots of updates on this tank as we work our way through this issue. I really want to make sure this angelfish pulls through and I don't have any worse damage or whatever. I really love this fish and I don't want to lose it. So again, make sure you're subscribed. You won't miss any of the updates or anything else I got on this angelfish tank here. Or any of the other tanks I got. I will try to do some around the world update here pretty soon too. So thanks again for watching. I'll see you real soon in the next one.